The Director General of the Budget Office of the Federation, Isaac Obasi, says reports that a sum of 27 billion has been marked out for the renovation of the National Assembly complex in Abuja, are way off the mark. Mr. Obasi explained that the correct figure is 9.25 billion naira. However, this clarification has come after an outpouring of public anger on social media by Nigerians who were protesting what they called insensitivity on the part of government to consider budgetary cuts on critical areas like education and health at such a bad time in the recent history of Nigeria. An anti-corruption watchdog, socio-economic rights and accountability project, SERAP, says the number of Nigerians living in extreme poverty has increased since May 2015, arguing that the reduction in healthcare and education budgets will exacerbate the prevailing inequalities, poverty, and create a vicious cycle of reduction in spending and increment in socio-economic inequalities. Joining us now from our Abuja studio to discuss this is Professor Isaac Obasi of the Department of Public Administration, University of Abuja. Good morning, Professor Obasi, and welcome to the morning show.
Thank you, Dr. Ruben.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, you must have listened to my introduction. The federal government has tried to cut from basic education budget and also from healthcare budget for the 2020 budget. Now, we're also told that there is a plan to spend up to about 9 billion just to renovate the National Assembly complex. There's been some clarification by the Director General of the Budget Office, Isaac Obasi, who says that where government is simply following what the law says in terms of the percentage for basic health care and education under the Consolidated Revenue Fund. I'm sure you must have been following the controversy. What's your take? What do you think the problem really is?
Thank you, Dr. Abati. Let me first contextualize this size of budget that you are even cutting. No matter what the law says, that law is not proper, should be changed. If you look at successive governments, federal governments, the allocation to education and health can be said to be very appalling, ridiculously very low. In 2014, before this government came to power, allocation to education was 12%, to health, 5-point-something%. In 2015, which the Jonathan administration did, the budget before leaving, allocation to education was 11.79. To health, it was 5-point-something. Then, subsequently, under the Buhari administration, education went down to 8% of the size of the budget. Health went below 5, 4-point-something, 4-point-something, till death. Education went from 8 to 7-point-something, 7 till 6.7 in 2020, estimated original budget proposal in December. So if you look at the size, precisely there's nothing to cut out from there. Secondly, if you look at the fact that international benchmarks, in education you have about 15 to 20% recommended for education by UNESCO. Nigeria is far from meeting that. In health, the Abuja Declaration, in 2001, by AU countries that pledged to allocate 15% to health sector, Nigeria is far from that. Since that time up till now, regardless of the regime and regardless of the political party, we've not given allocated up to 6%. The highest was close to 6% under Jonathan in 2012. So if you look around, you see that definitely we are not giving education, education and health. In fact, if you like, human capital development, the proper priority it should require.
That much is abundantly clear, Professor. But now that this current situation has exposed the limitations in the funding of UBEC, that 1% of the Consolidated Revenue Fund, based on certain assumptions that we can see don't always hold true, that clearly needs to be reformed. What other reforms would you want to suggest? Because this time last year, in June of 2019, President Buhari did say that parents whose children are not in school should be arrested. He was showing seriousness on the issue of education and citing the UBEC Act, Section 2 specifically. And now we have this kind of situation, which looks a bit like some kind of a flip-flop. Can you just tell us what kind of reforms you would like to see?
Tudum, it's not just a question of reforms. Let me put another historical perspective very briefly. The politics of this country is extraordinarily very reactionary. We are operating a reactionary ideology. A couple of days ago, our colleagues from Canada, the global epidemiologist, made a point about liberal politics and neoliberal politics. And I was watching and saying, even if we are practicing liberalism, and we will do more, we will do better, but we are practicing reactionary ideology of the capitalist system. And within this reactionary ideology, we are only progressively retrogressing and underdeveloping the Nigerian state and its economy and people. That's what we are going through. It's not a question of reform. I'm a reform champion. I'm a reform champion. There are certain things that are fundamental. You need to change what I call the bad politics of this country. We need to change it. You can't be cutting from an ant, education and health, and leaving an elephant where the flesh is, where you can cut as much as you want. I have listened to that explanation of it's only about 9 billion they allocated to renovation. No, my article today in Sunday at the Post, which is basically also on this COVID-19 and federal government revised 2020 budget proposal. My point there is, you don't need billions to renovate that place right now under COVID-19. If, for instance, they are smart enough, they could budget some millions. If there are areas that are terribly intolerable, they can do it as quick win projects within the context of COVID-19 where we are, and say this is extraordinarily important. But to me, there seems not to be some element of priority at all. If COVID-19 is ravaging all sources of your revenue, as you know, the Minister of Finance or the Minister of Information and Culture pointed that out yesterday, that coronavirus has ravaged or destroyed all their revenue sources. If it is doing so, and you have little resources, as you want us to believe, and we do believe and give the government on benefit of doubt, why then don't you prioritize? It's when you are prioritizing, you know these are the areas that are important. Education needs a lot under COVID-19. Health needs a lot under COVID-19. And remember that Mr. Boss Mustafa, our respected Secretary of the Government of Federation and Chairman of PTF on COVID-19, did say that the Nigeria health system can never be the same again in post-COVID-19 era. I'm asking, is this amount of money you are allocating, you are allocating paltry sum, and you are then cutting? And the cutting is very annoying. It's so discriminatory. 50-something%, 40-something% for education and health, and you cut others 10%. So why the discrimination? If you are cutting 10% or so across the board, then do it. Let us know it's across the board. Why being discriminatory, again, to education and health? So it's more than reforms. The political system has to really appreciate the problem. So if refunding education alone is not enough, UBA has a very wonderful act. You know, it even criminalizes parents who don't send their children to school. It gives, I think, is it not 2%? 1% is for Health Basic Education Act for health. I think 2% is for UBE. I stand to be corrected if my brain is not picking that now. So you find out that amount is more than enough even to do a lot, because studies have shown that the states are not paying their counterpart funding.
So this is what I was asking you, sir.
Able to access funds in UBA.
Yes, sir. So I take your points entirely about the need for a wholesale approach and not a piecemeal approach. But even when UBEC is fully funded, we still have this issue of unaccessed funds. Right now, in February of this year, 73 billion naira is unaccessed. States have left 73 billion naira on the table because they cannot match the funds.
Anyway, Prof, I understand, I know you're a professor of public policy and industrial relations. What's your assessment of the federal government's policy interventions so far in the management of COVID-19? And what do you think we should expect in terms of industrial relations post-COVID-19?
You are shifting me away from the cuts. Have we finished all the cuts?
No.
All the what?
I think we are finished. We can then...
No, you said whether we have finished all the what?
All the cuts. No, we'll come back to that.
The cuts.
Professor, we'll come back to that. Dr. Abati wants to take a detour.
Okay. Okay. Well, the relationship between labor and government so far has been a little bit cordial. But also you have had labor coming out clearly to make some statements very critically. If you are cutting salaries of politicians, please don't touch those of workers. They have made that point, and they are very serious about that. Nobody should toy with their minimum wage. Nobody should toy with their basic salary. You've seen in some states, health workers have gone on strike because of this warning strike in Kaduna State, for instance. So there is a tension that is, the dynamics of it, there's a tension in the dynamics, but it can be well managed because I think labor generally, under the NLC and TUC, they've been very accommodative and very understanding in the way government is managing this. And I think government needs to be, I made this point again, because I follow what the PTF is doing. As a columnist, almost every 2 days, I have an article on COVID-19 and policy response. So I follow what PTF is doing. And I'm one of those, because of closeness of what they are doing, I'm looking at it. I'm not a
Professor, please, can I just jump in here? I do beg your pardon.
The vibe is there.
Professor, please, could you hold your thoughts just for a moment? We'll take a short break and we'll be back for more with you. Please stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Still with us in our Abuja studio is Professor Isaac Obasi of the Department of Public Administration, University of Abuja. Thank you, Prof, for staying with us. If you may just complete your thoughts on the question I had asked earlier.
Okay.
Hello, Prof.
Hello.
You were about to comment on the PTF and the policy intervention so far with regard to COVID-19. Excellent.
Yes, and I was saying the vibe is there. The vibe already, it has been there. If you know the meaning of task force, ordinarily it's an emergency thing. It shouldn't last so long. Otherwise, people will get, so tired and fact that, and the routinized process will begin to take place. So I have argued that so far they have shown the energy to drive, and I have argued that if you don't take time to renew their membership, you may have fatigue setting in. And when I finished the 3 passes on that task force on them, Trump announced that he was disbanding the task force in the White House. I said, wow, but I mean, you have seen what is happening there. They've tried to return them again. But the task force needs energy to work, and they are overstressed. So if they are doing this, we need corresponding energy and vibe from the states. I could see that in Lagos. I've written about Lagos, I think, 2 times. I've seen that in Port Harcourt. I've done that. I've seen that in Calabar. I have done that, taking a different position from Dr. Abati on Calabar. I haven't done a systematic study on that as different from, piecemeal things that are coming out. And I discovered that the man was systematic. And when the federal government went there for inspection, definitely they confirmed that his proactive measures were excellent. So I could do that. I handled Kogi, and I saw that Kogi, of course, we all are at the same page now, that nothing is happening there. The guy was on self-denial continuously, and is driven by what you may call ignorance, arrogance, self-deceit, and the rest of them. Any state government that went along that way, they won't do well. They won't help the federal government. Kanu self, I also handle Kanu about his method and felt that the federal government needs the cooperation, intergovernmental cooperation of states and local governments to drive it. At the stage where we are now, they're pushing a lot of this to the states. And you can see some discordant tune here and there, some states rolling out guidelines that are a little bit contradictory or too difficult to implement. Fine. So far, we can say government is trying, but they have not given a deep thought to the education sector that is yet not opened. They need to think more. They need to use a differentiated approach, be gradual as they are in policy approach, but differentiate the private sectors, allow the final years to come in, allow private universities and secondary primary school to start as a text, because they have the potential to comply with the social and physical distancing and hygiene protocols, because they have good class size, lower class size, small class size. They can do that. Federal government can now use that as an experimental approach, watch how it goes, and then by the time they are doing this, they are putting the public institution, educational institution, into shape to be able to comply. Otherwise, we have a problem. Yesterday, it was all over, people crying. They are the proprietors and the rest of them, teachers, and saying, oh, 1 million plus of us are out of job, and government is losing about close to 80 billion revenue in tax. These are proper dilemmas that we are facing, but we have to really address it. I quite appreciate, I listened to the report you ran yesterday in what is happening in Britain. I appreciated it. I believe that Nigeria has to start gradually to open education to see how we can use a gradualist approach to enter into it. I'm not saying it shouldn't be now, but like state government has given a sign, okay, prepare for this. I think that's what we should be doing and get them, all of them prepared. So far, so good. But what I don't understand, you noted this morning before I left the house, is how Lagos is climbing and climbing and climbing. Do we need to go beyond the soft and gentle approach of the governor, which I said yes, and put in some bit of high-handedness, in quote. I don't say wholesale high-handedness of Wike of River State. I've made the comparison and say, for instance, if you combine Wike's approach with the gentle approach of incident general, perhaps you may get better result in Lagos. I am worried every single day. I see what is happening in Lagos. It is not acceptable. It's not acceptable. The only difference between it and New York is that people are not dying as they are dying in New York, which I call the most dreaded battleground in my piece on New York. But Lagos deserves more attention now. A lot of funds have been popped into there. The governor is doing his best. The commissioner for health is even overstretched. They're trying. I can say that, but I think we need to think deeper and see whether we can change approach about how we can control the impunity of Nigerians in Lagos. Nigerians are done to obey laws, but Lagos' own is extraordinary, very embarrassing.
Thank you, sir. I'll take you back to what we were discussing before about UBEC and the amount of money, 73 billion, that's been left on the table. Even the states that are able to generate the 50% counterpart do not get to access the money because they do not submit an action form. How should this be resolved? Because the bottom line is, even in the best of times when UBEC is fully funded, these lapses mean that service delivery to our children is poor. And you're completely right about class sizes. In public schools in Nigeria, the average is 49 pupils to one teacher. It's completely unacceptable.
Very good question, Tundun. The problem with UBE and the rest of them can be solved. Bad politics, lack of commitment on the part of a subnational government is a contributing factor. If we incentivize the counterpart funding thing, as we did, this country did excellently well under MDG. That's what was called conditional grant scheme. it was a successful program copied by other countries, recognized by the United Nations that worked in this country. And why did it work? The same subnational governments were the ones getting the counterpart fund they are depositing with the OSAP NDG. Those days, it's called OSAP NDG. So if it's 1 billion, OSAP NDG will give them 1 billion. They'll bring it, and they will have the items, projects laid out. So these other ones, I don't think it's just they don't have the action plan. It's laziness. They don't have interest in doing that. And maybe they don't think they can get out a lot of money out of the projects. They need to work. Subnational governments need to work to use the money in UBE. As I'm saying this now, the same thing applies with TED Fund, where some universities are not able to access the funds. Why? Because they're not able to account. Simple accounting. Tell us what to use this money for. If we are satisfied, we'll give you another tranche. They're not able to meet that. So when you talk about corruption, it's endemic, left and right. Whether it's a public service or public service in general, you find it there. So we need a lot of work to do.
Well, Prof, quickly before we go, last year when you delivered your inaugural lecture, one of the issues you talked about is about the relationship between ASU and the government of Nigeria. And you said that the problem will remain so, it will remain perennial. Have you had cause to change your mind since then? And why is it so?
I won't change my mind. And for now, I am neutral. And you will understand. You have a great insight into the universities. On opinion article those days, I was summoned for discipline. So I've decided to keep my cool. After giving the inaugural lecture, those who want to make use of the idea can make use of it. Otherwise, you'll be running in circles. I won't change my mind. I tell my wife every day, I finish my analysis on ASU. Everything is predictable. So you cannot anticipate anything different. So with that kind of approach and government approach, they'll be running in what? In circles. And as long I built a model on that in 2009.
Well,
a model
thank
on
you.
That.
Thank you, Professor.
Sorry.
Thank you,
so
Professor.
I don't see any change.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning on The Morning Show.